Hello everybody, welcome back to the Failing Writers podcast. Everyone listened to last week's episode? Yeah, there's a few hands going up. What about you? Yes, I'm looking at you. Really? Okay, well if there's anyone else who hasn't, I'm afraid you're going to have to stay behind and catch up. What do you mean, do I have to? Yes, you do. Right, and all of you who've already done your homework and listened to the previous episode, well done. I've given you all gold stars. Now, on with the show. Let's find out if Tom and John can heroically breathe new life into the subject of English and inspire and transform people's lives forever, turning the world into a better, more beautiful place full of enthusiastic young readers and writers, and teachers who are kind, full of energy and passion and encouragement. What do you mean unlikely? Get on with your work and shut your face.
So have you calmed down from last episode yet, John?
No, Tom, I haven't. No, I am still thoroughly inspired.
Good.
So.
Well, that's fine. That's completely fine, because that's probably a really good thing for the saviours of our children's future literacy.
I'm really glad to hear you're kind of on board with the failing writers are the superheroes of saving English thing.
Oh, completely. That's one of the reasons I'm wearing my underpants outside of my trousers.
Okay. So, Tom, remind me, where did we leave it last time?
In a nutshell, started writing our letter to Bridget Phillipson, worried about how English is taught in schools, not inspiring kids. Talking to Leah Crawford, she told us about the ways in which she can engage with kids. Set a spark that will light a fire, and we're quite inspired by it all. We said we'd talk to teachers and kids who practice what Leah preached, and here we are.
Okay, well, that just about covers it, I think.
Yeah. Oh, and we need to finish our open letter, don't we?
Oh, yes, we do. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, let's start by talking to some teachers who have been using those methods we were talking about with Leah.
Yeah.
Okay, first up, Emma and Helen from Sun Hill Infant School in Alresford.
Infants, you like the little mini tiny children ones?
Yeah.
Writing. Don't they just mostly run around picking their noses, breaking things and making noises like dinosaurs and fire engines?
Well,
or even sometimes like dinosaurs driving fire engines.
You see how young minds brim with creativity.
I think children adore reading stories, and I think that starts at a really young age, before they even come to us at school. And I think that's part of that love of sharing with their parents or grandparents or family members. I think the bit that gets harder perhaps is as that love of reading then turns into that writing. I think quite physically, little children, writing is quite challenging for them, because I think if you've ever seen an X-ray of a child's hand, a 4-year-old hand, it actually just hasn't formed properly at that point. It's still developing and forming.
Yeah.
So actually for them to start wanting to write and feel motivated to write when maybe it still just hurts a little bit, and actually we can chat and the children can just talk and love talking, why would I then want to write? I completely agree. I think most children really, really love stories and talking about books. What we've discovered a little bit is that once you start putting demands on children to write in a certain way, and they feel that what they're producing doesn't quite look the way it should, they start becoming very aware of that. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like they retreat back into their snail shell. It can be a real barrier, and it can put children off quite early on in the process. Definitely, we've seen that at school. So
I think I might actually be a 4-year-old child having listened to that.
I think I might still be too.
A lot of that rang true. Yeah.
That's interesting. So it's like the formalizing of storytelling and everything. As soon as you start doing that, and you have to, like you say, it has to look a certain way and sound a certain way. And if you can't quite achieve that, it's
storytelling and the vocabulary side of things and the oracy, that bit can keep going. And that is really exciting.
Yeah.
Children want to tell stories. They love telling stories about their own lives and about their worlds. But I think the older they get, the harder it is if they cannot get that writing to be the way that they feel they might want it to be. So if you're looking at children with kind of any additional needs, for example, we feel that as long as children are communicating, it kind of doesn't matter the way that they need to get it down. They could type, we could scribe it for them, we could use technology, but it does matter to them. And that's the difficulty. So yes, I think those transcriptional barriers definitely do put some children off, that's for sure.
So do you try to keep it as informal as possible for as long as possible then? Are you trying to keep it verbal to a certain extent?
I think so, but I think also it's about keeping it purposeful and engaging. And I think they care. They like to care about the world that's around them. And I think we have to be clever to think about the writing opportunities for them that make them want to write. So if it's writing a thank you card, or they want to write, we did something about Big Blue Whale, the book by Nicola Davies, and the first page of that story is all about how whales have been hunted and they're close to extinction. And for every 20 whales there used to be, there's now only one. And from that moment of reading that book, the children were so engaged in the idea that this incredible creature is now close to extinction. They wanted to write. They were desperate to write letters to people and to write about these fascinating creatures. So I think, yes, the storytelling and keeping it informal in some ways through vocabulary and discussion is really important, but also being clever to get children to want to write along the way.
Yeah.
And how often in this process of giving them the frameworks and the right channels to express themselves, how often is it they come out with something that does just blow you over, or you think, well, how's that come out of that brain? What?
Yeah, really regularly. They're incredible. And I think you're amazed sometimes. So I'm thinking about in the classroom last week, and the children were asked to describe how this character who had landed on the world, a refugee really, could be feeling. And this one child who's 7 said something like, it felt titanic to see the looming skyscrapers above me. I felt overwhelmed and really small, which was incredible to think at the age of 7, they got that understanding of what that must have been like to be a stranger completely in a place they don't know. So yeah, pretty much blown away every single day by what children are capable of. And I think particularly within my classroom, I have younger children with older children. I have a mixed class, and listening to how they are inspired by their older peers and how they work together. This little Dot, who was 5 at the time, came out with the word trepidatious and understood it and completely got it in the right context, because she'd been immersed in from the stories we've been using and the text, and her understanding, and just love playing with words. They're adventurous children, and it's exciting to see.
Interesting, isn't it? It's almost like the pressure of having to get things perfect, or your writing not being good enough, is the first stumbling block you've got to navigate.
And as you sort of pointed out there, Tom, I don't think that's just a problem for kids, is it?
No.
I can think of a couple of other writers who fall at that hurdle.
Yeah.
In fact, I think probably are there actually any writers who don't have that feeling at some point when you're suddenly convinced that what you're writing is just an absolute load of doo-doo and you want to give up?
Sorry, did you just say doo-doo?
I did say doo-doo, yeah.
If you did say doo-doo, do you do that often?
No, I do not say doo-doo, do I? But I do say doo-doo when there might be young people listening, Tom.
Oh, do you? Right,
Yes,
that makes sense, yeah. The little
Tommy!
Don't worry, it'll all get bleeped. Anyway, so do you think part of this is teaching kids that failure is good, to actually embrace failing a bit more in the classroom?
I think there's actually some truth in that. I think there's so much pressure on kids from a frighteningly early age.
Yeah.
See, that's why you need this podcast. Young and old, everyone needs the failing writers.
Yeah, in a really good way. We totally normalise failure. That it's like an it's an acceptable state of being to be in, isn't it? It's natural.
So it's actually a good state of being to be in. Glad to be of service.
Yeah.
And speaking of pressure from an early age, my next question was about spelling, punctuation and grammar, a.k.a. the dreaded spag.
The spag.
And what age does the whole spag thing come into play? Presumably that's not really taught until they're a little bit older.
No, it is. It definitely is. It's definitely in the infant school, yes. No, you would be amazed at the demands asked from the government on children as early as year 1.
In year 1?
Yes, regarding the expectations around spelling and grammar.
Wow.
Yeah, those are the bits we have to be really careful about, because as Emma was alluding to, we have to teach those bits, but we don't want them to constrain the children. But we do understand that if they don't start to use it repeat regularly and consistently, then bad habits are formed as well. So there's a real balance for children about when to intervene and when to just let them write. And that's, as a school, almost what we've had to decide. So yeah, if you could see what year 2 are expected to do, it's a lot of discussion. But I think we used to be far more prescriptive about, in this piece of writing, we've learnt now about subordination, and we've learnt about plural spellings, and you know, when you're writing, we want to see that. And actually, over the last 2 years, we've drawn away from that because it was stifling our children. It was almost like a checklist, and we got formulaic writing because of it. Whereas now we're getting children who are free and hopefully happy to explore and are motivated to write. And I think as well, some of the SPAG stuff, although dry, it is dry, there is something about children's working memory, and we need to teach some of this transcriptional, spelling, grammar stuff, because when they come to write, we want them to feel as confident as possible to showcase their ideas, and a child's working memory can only hold a certain amount. So I think when they've suddenly come up with their idea and then they have to say, oh, what does that look like? How do I spell that? Do I need a capital? Where's that full stop go? That's just such an overload. So some of the SPAG does need to be taught in order to build that fluency for writing, but then will lead to some of these amazing compositions.
Yeah. My youngest son had a brilliant way of dealing with punctuation, because he used to love writing stories. And so he would do that. He'd kind of write a story how he wanted, but then right at the end, he'd remember that he was supposed to use punctuation, and he would just liberally scatter various punctuation marks around, sometimes in the middle of sentences, sometimes in the middle of words if the gap was big enough.
That sounds very clever idea to me.
I think so. I think so. We've got to get them in. He knew he had to get them in.
Yeah. Just pop them in wherever and then it's done. Tick it off.
Yeah, you see, clever that, isn't it? You get the fun bit done and then do the boring bit afterwards.
Yeah. Controversially, though, do you know what? I think SPAG is one of those things that will come along almost without teaching it. Like if you can inspire kids to actually enjoy stories and poetry and stuff, that's the important bit. Do you know what I mean? They're not going to get to the age of 10 and not know where to put a full stop.
Yeah, maybe.
You absorb those rules just by being enthusiastic about language and literature. You're probably going to be more enthusiastic if you're not doing a load of dry lessons about SPAG. Don't know. Anyway. Could just be me.
I guess just a slight aside on that, the other question is, does it really matter if it's not perfect?
I know. See, this is how I feel.
There's this massive focus on everything has to be exactly right for punctuation and grammar. And language is it's a living entity. It's not set in stone. That's quite a recent phenomenon in the minds of people.
And I get that argument about getting into bad habits.
Yeah.
But it's not like bad habits get stuck forever. Do you know, we have this impression that if you get into a rut on something, then you'll always do it forever. But it just doesn't quite work like that, does it?
Yeah.
Anyway. On a lighter note, we asked Emma and Helen if they had any examples of work from their pupils. I'm pretty sure when I was that kind of age, when I wrote, I imagine it was a bit like, I saw a dog. It was scary, you know.
Yes. Or your daily diary. I used to have to do the daily diary.
Yeah. I can't imagine it being that good. But you've brought along an example or a couple of examples of work from pupils. I'm really intrigued to hear them. Because like I say, based on my own writing at that age, my expectations are quite low, I think. Can we hear something?
Yeah, so I've brought along a little boy's writing, Oakley's writing, and I chose him on purpose, really, because he has been inspired to write this year. And I would say he, in some respects, is a typical writer that's come out of early years and then come into a year 1 classroom and felt a little bit like, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm not quite ready yet. And I don't know how to put pen to paper. But he really was ready and he really did. But his confidence is the thing that's definitely inspired me, that's really grown. So this is Oakley's postcard, which was based upon a text called The Bear and the Piano. And in the story, he's really great at playing the piano and he goes to play in New York. And it's very exciting. He's never been there. He was in the forest, very isolated. And Oakley wrote a postcard back home to his friends in the viewpoint of the bear. It's very short, but it's very sweet, I think. Dear bear friends, yesterday I was on TV And I was a little trepidatious because I have never played a grand piano in front of all these people before. Tomorrow I will be famous and I will get standing ovations from everyone. I was really thrilled that they loved my music. With love, from the bear.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very good.
Mm-hmm. And so I also have something from Erica, and she is a year older than Oakley, but this is also in response to the bear and the piano.
Okay.
But this was from the beginning of the story. So we looked at the story, which we do love, but we said, oh, I think we could add some more detail. Let's describe this forest a little bit more.
I see.
So one summery day in the flowery forest, a young bear cub was skipping along and he found something he'd never seen before. Meanwhile, the wind was blowing in the gentle, soft breeze, and birds were singing. Butterflies were fluttering in mid-air, and squirrels were nibbling nuts. The wind was huffing the rabbits' ears. Blooming cherry blossoms danced in the air, and beavers were splashing in a mini water pool. Suddenly, the bear saw that weird thing again. He touched it with his stubby paw. It went plonk and fell into the water. It had a spiky top, and it was brown. The object was shaped like an upside-down cocoon. He dashed back home in fright.
That's really good.
Wow, really good.
I love the anticipation as well. We're gonna find something really exciting and then talk about all the other wonderful things in the forest. It's like, tell me.
I know. And she is such a creative at that, and she loves drawing. So she had drawn this whole scene out first and spent a couple of sessions talking it through. And that's where that getting into the book through a different way and using the arts really, really helped.
Yeah. It's funny, I nearly said that. You could see that she could see it in her head.
Yes.
So much better than anything I ever wrote at that age.
Yeah. I feel bad for 5 and 6 year olds, I think.
It's all about the teacher's job, isn't it? That's what they say.
You're right.
Well, I do have to say at this point, we have been incredibly well supported by the Opening Doors team and Leah Crawford. They have really inspired us, and our writing has completely changed because of the principles that we've been applying. So although we've been taking it up on our own journey, it was from those principles, but it has completely changed our writing. And I think our children, the things we're seeing them create over the past couple of years is different to anything we've ever seen. We've been doing it for a while now.
Yeah, I think that children are writing for the right reasons now. They're writing because they've got something to say.
Yes.
Well, that's very exciting. That's great. What a lovely change.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for that.
It's a pleasure. It's lovely to do it.
Cheers.
Bye.
God, I wish I'd had them at primary school.
Just think, Tommy, if you had Emma and Helen as teachers, you might be hosting a very different podcast now.
Oh, no, you've got that wrong, mate. I wouldn't be hosting a podcast, would I? You'd be contacting my agent to see if I'll come on your podcast.
Right, okay.
That's how it'd be going down. And I'd be like, I'll think about it. I've thought about it now.
Oh, yeah, and?
Sorry, I'm afraid it's a no at the minute.
Right.
I'm just,
back.
Tom's just too busy.
Back in the real world, Tom. Back in the real world.
Yeah.
Here's
got a lot of book signings and stuff.
Here's our next set of super teachers.
Right. Yes. Laura and Ben are at Richmond Hill Primary Academy near Doncaster, teaching juniors. So that's age 7 to 11. So let's hear what they had to say about writing.
What are the targets for the curriculum in terms of writing specifically? And do they differ from your personal targets? It's a big question, wasn't it, to start off with?
Yeah, I would say that. It's a big question. Good question. Yeah, so I teach year 6. So by the end of year 6, you have the end of Key Stage 2 TAF, it's called the Teacher Assessment Framework.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a list of criteria a child needs to meet to be able to be age-related by the end of primary school.
Yeah.
It's quite technical stuff. Whereas I think as a teacher, of course, you want them to be able to use and apply those kind of skills, but you don't want them to do it robotically, which I think is sometimes what can happen. Just trying to tick off boxes so they can get a certain level.
Yeah.
You kind of want them to be authentic writers. You want them to write for a purpose because they've got something to say, not just because the teacher needs to tick some boxes.
We try and, have a really rich reading curriculum. I think that's something that you won't get in the teacher assessment framework. You want to create a really rich reading environment where reading's on a pedestal in the class. We're trying to develop children who can pinch bits from a text. We talk about children magpieing things, and we want them to see themselves as writers. It's all right reading a book, but they've got to sort of remember that a writer has written that, and they've chosen words for a purpose, and we're trying to develop the children's sort of inner writing voice.
Yeah.
I'm thinking an example of something which worked well was the children wrote a description of a teacher. So we started off
That's a dangerous game.
Yeah.
It's a really good lesson.
It's fantastic. We started off with Roald Dahl, which sometimes teachers look down on, I think. But the kids knew Miss Trunchbull. They knew Miss Honey. They were able to relate with it. They were able to access it really easily. But then we worked towards reading an extract from Jane Eyre. So I think because it kind of had that scaffold leading up to it, they were able to, they were excited to read it. And I don't think if we'd have started off with reading an extract from Jane Eyre, they would have quite appreciated it as much.
Yeah.
Are there any books that are like guaranteed smash hits with the kids?
We've read Malamander by Thomas Taylor in year 4. I think we're on the 3rd year now, and the kids absolutely adore it. I think if you're passionate about it as a teacher, if you're enthusiastic, that's half the battle. You don't want to be pulling a text out where you think, oh, I've done this like 10 years and I can't bear to do it again, because the kids will pick up on it.
Yeah.
I always say, I'm so excited to read this with you because it's fantastic, brilliant stories.
Yeah. In year 6, there are 2 books I've read which have left the class either in tears or just absolutely gobsmacked by the end. They were Windrush Child by Benjamin Zephaniah. When we finished that book, it was playtime, but the kids just sat there waiting for the next thing. They're like, that's not the end. Where's the second book? So that one, without fail, always inspires good writing. And the second is The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, which can obviously be a difficult one to teach. But again, by the end of the book, they are that engrossed and can empathise with the characters so well. They can write as characters.
That all seems like incredibly high-level stuff, I think, for that year. I mean, you obviously feel like they're ready for it, and
I think we pitch high. Yeah. We do pitch high. It's about challenge for all, isn't it? And not dumbing down to the children, but exposing them to those challenging texts. Because if we want them to write like those writers, but we never expose them to them, then they're never going to.
Yeah.
And we do, when we talk about Jane Eyre and Little Women and so on, we only ever give them a short extract. Like Laura says, we don't dumb down, but teach to the top and then kind of scaffold for those who do struggle to access that. And they always surprise you as well. We did a piece of writing where the children had to describe a ship in a storm. And in fact, one boy who you'll be speaking to, his writing for this was incredible. And as you read it, you can see parts of Frankenstein, parts of Dracula, all these classic texts. And it might just be sentence structure, but he's borrowed it and he can explain why he's used these sentence structures. At the beginning of the year, he would not have been writing like that. So they do surprise you. So I think you've got to kind of be open-minded to every child. Every child has the potential to reach that. You've just got to expose them to it.
We should play that clip now, shouldn't we?
The lad who wrote the Ship in the Storm diary thing?
Bobby.
Yeah. Oh, totally, yeah. Run that clip.
I wrote a diary about a man called John Newton, was it? Yeah. I keep thinking of Isaac Newton.
The other Newton.
He was a captain of a slave ship. He was a man of God. He's famous for writing the song Amazing Grace.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, wow, okay, brilliant.
And he hit a storm when he was sailing, and my first paragraph's about the storm, so...
Okay.
Dearest diary, the tempest broke without warning. Lightning raced across the sky, illuminating the ocean, making it appear like a bonfire burning in the pitchy darkness. In no time at all, even the strongest of sailors struggled to stay on their feet. The roaring waves threw the greyhound around like an infant's toy. Hail the size of marbles fell from the heavens like arrows, obliterating anything in its path. Another wave crashed onto the ship, followed by a claw of lightning striking the mast. It set alight like a candle. The waves grew larger, devouring our vessel. Sea spray blinded me and my crew. The tempest grew worse. I feared my life would come to a watery end.
Wow, that was biblical in its proportions.
It was.
Thank you.
I felt like you captured that captain's voice brilliantly. It did not sound like someone of your age speaking. That was amazing. Yeah.
And it's really good how you set the sort of the fragility of all the human stuff against nature. Like, being an infant's toy or like setting fire like a candle. It just gave that sense of we have no control. We are completely in the lap of the gods and nature is stronger than we are.
Yeah, amazing. And great grasp of simile as well.
Thank you.
Very
Brilliant
good.
stuff.
Should we, Tom, should we give up writing now?
Yeah, I think so.
Should we stop?
Yeah.
Should we not bother anymore?
Seems a little pointless in places, doesn't it?
Well done, mate. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Got to be honest, I was genuinely shocked at how good that was.
I know.
Like, during, it was really, when you're going, oh, go on then, we'll have a listen. You go,
yeah.
oh, bloody hell.
You can
right,
see
fair enough, lad.
how carefully he's observed writing from that era, can't you? And then kind of mimicked the vocabulary and the syntax and everything. Yeah. Very clever lad.
Which is interesting because it takes you back to what we were saying before about the spag stuff and about how they will learn it through doing it and through passion. And like if you quizzed him on the actual bare bones of the syntax, the science of it, I doubt he'd be able to necessarily tell you all the ins and outs of it.
Explain the grammar back to you.
Yeah, but he can mimic it and he can express himself through it without having to know the technical terms behind it.
That's it, he uses it.
But one thing we haven't mentioned yet, John, which I think might be one of the biggest issues with getting kids at this age to read more is it's kind of the digital elephant in the room, isn't it, with the technology thing, the Xbox, PlayStation, the social media, the TikTok. Let's ask them about that.
Yeah, it's a battle I think for parents, as a parent speaking, definitely is. And as a teacher, just trying to instill a love of reading in children when there's those demands on their time.
Attention spans have dropped dramatically.
Yeah, definitely.
Information's I mean 20-second videos now rather than...
Yeah.
Children have less patience and it's harder to get them to read a whacking great novel, certainly in year 4, when you're trying to get them into those chapter books a little bit more. It's tricky, but I think the trick is to present them with those fantastic books. And reading aloud is something that's still a huge part of our curriculum in school because we see the value in it, but it's something that a lot of children just aren't read to at home anymore. I
think after teaching in year 6 for 10 years, you've seen the choice of book change massively as well. I'll not name any authors, but year 6 children are now reading a lot of books which would probably be more suited to year 3.
Interesting.
They're the ones they're picking themselves.
Yeah, I do slightly worry about our nation's love of literature.
Yeah,
there just does seem a less appetite. Like my wife and I read to our kids from when they were literally tiny, just partly just because it gave you something to do when you were sat with them. So they were like babies and we were still reading to them. But it still didn't work. And despite the fact that we love it and they see us reading and, we feel like we've done all the things you're supposed to do. And it's still, I don't know, it feels like...
Bad parenting.
Bad parenting is what it comes down to. Well, it
sounds like it.
Aside from literally...
My kids love reading. Just, I don't know if that's relevant to this discussion. But, yeah.
It's soul destroying though, isn't it? When you've kind of done everything because you love reading and you've surrounded them with amazing books, you've read to them, but there's other fun things to do. They're on a screen, and it's easy. It requires little effort, and when they pick up a book, they've got to put some effort in. There might be words that they come across that they don't know, that they've got to sort of read around a little bit.
Yeah, I do think though, when you've got your class sat together and you're reading to them, and like I say, it's not a lesson where you've got to then analyse the text. I do still think there's kind of that magic element where even the children who, they might have troubles at home, they might have a short attention span, they are just kind of mesmerised. If you pick the right book, I think if you pick very carefully, you still get that, and that is a little glimmer of hope, I think.
Yeah, and then they'll still go home and pick up an iPad and watch it.
Yeah. They'll love the book so much that they'll go straight home and watch the TV adaptation.
Watch the film,
So just to sum up then, so the future's doomed and we've got a lost generation of readers.
Do you know, I do think one of the ways to get children into reading far more is to read to them more. And also it would be to free teachers up a little bit. I think there are so many demands, aren't there, where you need to tick so many boxes. Every single teacher I know loves reading and they want to pass that on to the kids. So I do think a little bit more freedom.
And we need to just value creativity more in that teacher assessment framework. It's nearly all about punctuation and features of different genres and things. And there's very little about the flair that children have and just that creativity. We definitely need to value that as being something that's amazing when children do that. And they don't get credit for it.
Oh, no credit for your ideas or imagination, are there?
Really none at all.
Checking it now.
There's a few about style, if you like, conscious control and style, but
even that's not the same thing. Is it?
Not the sort of emotional impact that they can have when they make these amazing word choices.
I think teaching year 6, they've done their exams now. We've submitted the teacher assessments, the writing. Now we're teaching writing. It's got purpose. They're writing a biography and a programme for their end of year production. Suddenly it a genuine purpose, and they know that when their parents come to watch the show, that is going to be on their parents' seat. And suddenly some of those who weren't as enthusiastic are really, really trying the hardest.
There's that writing for a purpose thing again. That keeps cropping up, doesn't it? Imagine writing something just in order to show you can demonstrate various writing techniques.
Yeah, that is quite depressing, isn't it?
It's kind of like the opposite of freedom of expression, isn't it?
It is, so, completely constraining. But I think that's kind of how the curriculum is currently set up, which is why we're so reliant on really good teachers to kind of somehow circumnavigate that.
I think that's true, yeah.
Speaking of which, shall we hear some more of Laura and Ben's pupils' work?
Absolutely, let's.
Hey, Oliver, so what have you got for us?
We've been reading Peter Pan, and we've also been following the play as our leavers show. So this is a biography of Jane Barry's life. The writer.
Fantastic.
Born in Kirriemuir in the spring of 1860, James Matthew Barry's early childhood was ideal. He spent his days playing with his brothers and sisters in the cottage garden and nearby glens. However, when James was 6 years old, tragedy struck. His brother David, aged 13, unexpectedly died in a skating accident. His mother, Margaret, was devastated. She would sit by the window both day and night, longing for her son who would never come home, her son who would never grow up. In an attempt to ease his mother's depression, James dressed in his brother's clothes and mastered his brother's whistle. This slowly lessened his mother's grief, and she eventually began to give time to her other children, realising that her second youngest son was a natural-born storyteller. She encouraged this talent by telling him tales of Scottish folklore, which included sinister sirens, ferocious fairies, and plundering pirates.
Oh, mate. Very, very good.
Thank you.
That was so slick and very well read as
Thank
well.
you.
Wasn't it? It really was.
The son that would never grow up. And that alliteration at the end. Very, very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice.
That is a really tidy piece of writing, that.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's incredibly hard to get a lot of information over that quickly.
It is, without it sounding like a list, just a list of stuff.
Yeah,
But you didn't.
bullet
You
points.
kind of wove it all together, so it kind of took us on a little journey through. That was, brilliant. Really good.
Very impressive, mate. Well done.
Who wants to go next?
I'm reading a portal story inspired by Alice in Wonderland, Coraline, and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh, amazing.
Wow. And sorry, what was your name again?
Eliza.
Right.
Emily jumped in the large puddle, laughing at the huge splash as it scared a flock of starlings off. No jumping in puddles, Emily's mum said firmly. How many times? Come and walk on the path. So Emily slowly walked over to the plain concrete path, thinking only of the fun she could have in the puddles and mud. Her parents' voices dragged on and on about their jobs and money, and words that most of which Emily didn't even understand. Then small droplets began to fall from the dark, cloudy sky. Anything could be better than this, Emily thought. The further the family walked, the thicker the murky fog became. A distant rumble of thunder caused Emily to look up and see her, a silhouette of a tall figure. Her fingers were long and sharp. Her hair was in a tight bun upon the top of her head. Her eyes were a deep shade of blue, like the sky in a stormy night. Lightning flashed in her pupils as Emily was hypnotised by the inky darkness of her eyes. The only thing that snapped Emily out of dreamland was a fierce bark. Emily focused again and shivered at the sight of a vicious-looking dog. It growled at her and bared its sharp teeth. Emily hurried to try and catch up with her parents, but she couldn't see them. A chill sent a shiver down her spine. "Mum, Dad, where are you?" she called, starting to get nervous. She ran to go and find them, but couldn't.
Wow.
Ooh.
Brilliant descriptions.
Very good. Inky skies and stuff.
And that really vivid, like properly vivid.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, and the eyes like storms, which kind of reflects the whole feeling of it as well. And wow, that was very good.
It's proper stuff of nightmares, that.
Yeah, very dark. Yeah.
You got right into my fears.
What was the bit about the further they walked, the murkier it got as well? That was very brooding, wasn't it? And foreboding. Yeah. Excellent.
Do you know what happens next?
She sees a shine in a puddle and then goes to look at it, but can't reach it. And then she falls into the puddle and keeps on falling and then lands in this room and goes into a door. And then there's the woman that's with the dog in the room.
Ah, right. And do we ever find out who that is?
No.
My favourite kind of story. Nice and ambiguous.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. Well done. Fantastic. So good.
Really good.
So
really good. We got any more?
Yes, we do. But before we hear the last couple of very talented young'uns, I want to introduce Carleen and Penny, who teach secondary, which is 11 to 16 for our non-British listeners.
Yeah, we asked Carleen and Penny what they thought was going on, and sure enough, similar themes arose.
This developing a voice in writing is a long process and an enjoyable one, but also one that perhaps doesn't fit in easily to school schemes. I wonder whether we might struggle a little bit to create those spaces where children can explore, imagine, and find their voice. What do you think, Carleen? Is that something?
Oh, no, I'm in complete agreement with everything that you said, Penny. It's the demands on students to produce writing quickly is certainly a factor. They've got to write a piece of creative writing that's judiciously choosing vocabulary and is interesting and engaging in 45 minutes. So they've got to write quickly and creatively very fast. We're expecting them to write pieces of writing that are persuasive, and all of those demands on them do not replicate the real life writing process of drafting and editing and crafting.
And Carleen, what you're mentioning there, of course, is this process of writing fast, and that's at Key Stage 4 at the end of Year 11. And I wonder whether we've got that goal in our sights, haven't we? Perhaps teachers are thinking, right, I've got to get them to that point, but rather than building that process and widening that process and exploring, it's like we need to get this now without that craft.
Yeah, and you can't talk about the decline in writers, looking at those statistics, as you were saying there, John, from the Literacy Trust, without talking about the decline in readers. And ultimately just that engagement in stories and wanting to learn about other people's worlds and immersing themselves in those worlds is synonymous with the writing process.
45 minutes, it's not a long time, is it? I mean, I think I'm a pretty quick writer when I get in the zone.
You are a quick writer, yeah.
But that actually makes me sort of a little bit angry inside that young people are expected to kind of just vomit out the best work in 45 minutes.
I think you can hear a smidge of frustration in some of these teachers' voices, can't you?
Yeah.
45. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Who the chuff came up with that idea? I bet that was Mr. Gove again.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. The amazing Mr. Gove did crop up a couple of times in conversations, didn't he, with various people?
Yeah, he did. Obviously, we can't play any of that because we'd probably get sued. But
probably would.
Yeah. But it's kind of no wonder there's a declining interest in English, I think.
Yeah, if there's kind of everything's sort of set around making it slightly more boring, it's there is a kind of element of, oh yeah, maybe that's why people aren't quite as interested, because we've made it dull. Although Penny and Carleen's approach to writing is perhaps a bit more conducive to enjoyment, isn't it?
I think so.
Because so many children see the writing process as work. The only time they write stories is because they see it as we're in English and we've got to work. Whereas actually, if we get them to just free write, I've had a lot of success with just free writing, and then we can start to craft and edit. But free writing's brilliant. And also, like Penny, I like to write with my students. I sit in the class and I do it with them. I've got my own exercise book.
And will you read yours? Will you share it?
I do. Unfortunately, John, maybe Penny can relate to this a bit. I get a bit, can I share mine?
No, I totally get that. Yeah.
And the kids are all like, oh, not again, mate.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Dominating this, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, we all need an audience sometimes. It's okay.
The captive one, even better though, isn't it? That's where it's
you
at.
will listen.
Who doesn't need a bit of affirmation?
Exactly. It's nice.
Speaking of which, let's give a couple more pupils of Richmond Hill a chance to shine. Let's hear some more of their stuff.
Hello. What's your name?
I'm Grace.
Hiya, Grace. What are you reading to us?
I'm going to read a poem that's inspired by Paul Laurence Dunbar, which is a metaphorical poem about a caged bird, but it's my own version.
Okay.
I know why the lion roars, alas, when the soft dusk falls and the warming sun leaves, when the silver moon illuminates the life-filled grass, and as the moths within ascend en masse, and the birds settle in the acacia trees, the stars glowing bright amidst blessed teals. I know what the captive lion feels. I know why the captive lion paces, till its claws are shredded on the concrete floor, for he must ignore all those judging human faces when he would much rather be in those heart-warming places. And the pain still echoes through his collapsing pores, yet his love still throbs and pain still chases. I know why the captive lion paces.
Wow. Very, very good.
Yeah.
Do you read much poetry?
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful meter and rhythm in that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really, really did. That was amazing.
It was a very visual poem, wasn't it? I could picture everything in my head. The moths ascending en masse and the lion pacing
scraping
around.
his paws. Yeah.
Very, very impressive. Have you written much poetry, or do you tend to just write in class normally, or do you write any extra stuff?
I think I've written one at home, but yeah, I usually do it at school.
Yeah.
Okay, you should write more at home. Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Definitely.
Well done. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
So last up is George, and he's in year 4.
Okay. Hi, George.
Hey up.
How you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks. How are you?
We're good, Tar.
Yeah, we're all right. Looking forward to hearing what you got for us.
What do you have for us?
So these are the last 2 verses of my long river journey poem.
Great.
The river moves silently onto the city. It is crowded by buildings, hemmed in by roads. The river is minding stone on the bottom, weeping its tears beyond the riverbank. The river is slowing. Fresh water meets salt water, rippling through marshes, jumping into the hand of its old friend, saying goodbye to the shoreline, goodbye to the riverbirds, and hello to the seabirds. The journey is over.
Wow.
That's lovely.
Isn't it?
Personifying the water as tears as well. I wanted more of that, I got to be honest.
Yeah.
I was well into it, and then it ended. I just wanted more.
Needs another 4 or 5 verses, that, yeah.
That was brilliant. Well done.
Wow.
Mate. And you're year 4. Wow. How about you? Are you quite fond of writing poetry, or do you tend to just write at school?
I just tend to write at school.
Right. Okay, you're another one. You should definitely write more poetry.
Thank
Okay.
you.
That was all brilliant, and so brilliantly read as well, really, really well read.
Thank you.
I think often with poetry, you get a very different sense of a poem when the actual poet themselves reads it. And you all did an excellent job. Well done.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That is brilliant.
You see, it gives me hope hearing these kids.
Yeah, and, well, not just the kids, the teachers as well. It makes you realise just how many great teachers there are out there working with all the pressures of the job and the restraints of time and the curriculum. Do you know, there's so much they've got to do, probably more than ever. But, yeah, amazing. Here's Penny and Carleen again with another example of a pupil's poem. This one's special, this one. It's really good.
And just going back to the enjoyment part, I think that, and as Penny said earlier, I'm not talking about the school I'm in now or previous schools that I've been in, but it can sometimes be death by acronym. And you need to write in terms of an order of an acronym.
Yeah.
I mean,
This is like
killer.
The Forest or...
Yeah. Yes, things like that.
But I mean, wow, what a fun sponge the acronym is, But
It's a really good way to let the kids really let their creativity go wild, isn't it?
Well, what's interesting, though, you can also, use structures and scaffolding in a really powerful way. There are ways that you can shape writing, but at the same time, for example, description writing, you have to pack it with adjectives. Just take somebody like Hemingway. He uses very little descriptive language, but incredibly powerful declarative statements. So it's about giving them access to a huge range of writers with all their different styles and experimenting. And it's all about that reader connection and what are you hoping to achieve?
Yeah.
But that type of exploration has to be built into a curriculum for it to have real resonance, I think.
Is there anything in particular that you've done with the students that has sparked them as a whole?
There's something that I did with, I use a book called Grow Your Own Poem by Kate Clancy.
Right.
I use that when I write my own poetry as well. And she uses original work. And certainly when I'm starting a poetry scheme of work, I always get them to write poetry themselves first. And when we went to see Simon Armitage in Salisbury, it was fantastic and so inspirational. And I was saying to him that I use his poem, Not the Furniture Game, as a way to explore complex metaphor and ambiguity. And they really loved it. So we looked at the poem, we looked at how strange it is, how ambiguous and how surreal it is. And then I got them to write their own. And a couple of them did a fantastic job. I've got one here.
Oh, brilliant, yeah.
We'd love to hear
I
it.
don't know if you know about Not the Furniture Game. It's
I don't know that one, no.
It builds and builds and builds until you realise, I think there is something quite traumatic that's happened to this individual, possibly a veteran, and it's all incredibly ambiguous. And his opening, so Simon Armitage's opening few lines are, his hair was a crow fished out of a blocked chimney and his eyes were boiled eggs with the tops hammered in. And he continues in that vein, and it changes right at the end. And then you realise there has been this huge sort of traumatic event that's happened. And there's like a volta, a turn right at the very end. So we were sort of introducing this idea of turns and voltas in poetry as well. So this is Dan's, and he's chucked a bit that it might be read out. So it's called The Lonely Man. His hair was a rat pulled out of a broken sink, and his eye was a perfect opal stolen from a peasant begging for food. and his eyebrows were brackets written by a 2-year-old. His nostrils were a cave opening for a mind for giants, and his teeth were bones extracted from a duckling. His mouth was a blue, thin piece of string flattened by a machine, and his ears were elf shoes made by Santa himself. His head was a planet that had had a different orbit, and his wrinkles were vines hanging from an old kauri tree. His neck was a skyscraper that could break at the slightest wind, and his weight was a suitcase full of elephants. His arms were wacky inflatables outside of the car sales garage, and his palms were sticky pancakes made by dwarf hobbits. His legs were sausages cooked by a rescued raccoon, and his ankles were glass that broke and were put together with glue. They were as thick as thieves. She was as beautiful as an angel watching over him. He was a bird left behind whilst migrating. She was unseen to the human eye.
Wow.
Very good.
Wow.
Man, by Dan.
That's amazing.
So yeah, he did a great job at just understanding that sort of ambiguity, and that we were trying to get them to think about not using cliches in their writing.
That really came across, absolutely. And some of the subtlety in that as well, like the line about the head being a planet that wasn't on the right orbit or something.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
really good.
Lovely. And can I just play one more before we wrap this section
up? Yeah, go on while we're on a roll.
An example of some really beautiful descriptive language, almost, dare I say, a little bit Dickensian in the way it kind of zooms into a scene.
I was talking to one of my Year 10 girls today, Catherine, and we were using some structures about, looking at light and dark and stillness and movement. We're looking at paintings. And then I gave her a dinosaur picture randomly. And I said, what can you make of this? And can I just read her first paragraph?
Oh, please do, yeah.
I mean, it's just so beautiful. She said, beneath the emerald layer of the canopy, creatures chattered and buzzed. A small spider spun an intricate web between a pair of multicoloured flowers. A fuzzy caterpillar crawled over the surface of a half-eaten leaf. A tiny round bird perched on a branch up above, cocking its head inquisitively at the shallow stream below. Rays of sunlight, hazy in the humid jungle air, filtered down through the leaves, bathing tree roots and ferns in gold. Places the light struggled to reach were cast into shadow, deep, green, and silent. From one such shadow, by the edge of the stream, a dark, hulking shape emerged. So I'll just leave it at that. So she was just, we were playing around with sort of different contrasts, going from the canopy up above.
Yeah.
This idea of sort of crafting, but also letting them go at the same time.
Nice.
Stunning.
Yeah.
Incredibly visual, that, wasn't it? You could tell she was seeing all of that in her head.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So there you go. Beautiful stuff. And can we just take this moment to say thank you to the teachers who took time out of their busy schedules to chat with us. So massive, massive thanks to Helen, Emma, Ben, Laura, Carleen and Penny.
Yes, thank you guys. And thanks to the pupils who shared their work too.
Yes, absolutely.
Both the ones who shared willingly and also the ones who might not be aware that their work starred in a podcast.
I don't know how we legally stand on that, but let's move on. The teacher said it was fine. Teachers always know best.
It's their problem now.
But I reckon within and amongst, there's got to be some award-winning authors in there because there's some brilliant stuff
definitely.
in there. Brilliant stuff.
Well, that was nice. Wasn't that good? It's nice to celebrate young talent.
Yeah, it's nice. We should do that more often.
And also good to celebrate teachers as well. Teachers don't get enough celebrating, in my opinion.
No, totally, I agree. Although on the other side of that coin, some of my teachers were absolute. There's the bleeper again.
To be fair to them, Tom, they did have to put up with you.
That is a very fair point, actually. Very fair point. But having said that, generally now looking at my kids' teachers, like when you meet them at parents' evening and stuff, oh my God, they are just so committed.
They're very different to the teachers we had,
really
aren't they?
Passionate and full of energy and stuff. So hopefully that's part of the turning point. And that's the thing with all this curriculum stuff and everything in this letter to Bridget Phillipson is that they're almost doing it in spite of what they're being told they have to do.
I think sometimes that might be true. Yeah.
And some of them just need a little bit of freedom to say, come on, you're so passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just go and make it happen.
Well, it helps the kids and the teachers, doesn't it? It'd be nice. Yeah. Let's finish with this last clip from infant teachers Emma and Helen.
Do you know the thing that I've noticed, which has been really lovely, actually, because we've been working on this as a school for 2 years now, and the texts have been definitely the thing that have made the difference, our careful planning and ambition within those texts. So our children have had a variety of poetry and different kind of non-fiction that they've seen in different ways. And it has really been about things that children, as Emma was saying, deeply care about. And actually what I've noticed is the passion that the teachers have developed along the way is so much better now than it ever was. And it's almost like they've tried this new approach we've been using compositionally, and they can really see the creativity coming through and the children's imaginations coming through, and they're teaching with more passion, and therefore the children are more passionate. I don't think you can get passionate communicators if you don't have good role models. And that's definitely something that we're celebrating in our school at the moment, which is great.
So there you go. Oh, we should actually finish our open letter.
Oh yeah,
really, shouldn't we?
Oh yeah.
Dot the T's and cross the I's.
I forgot about that. Yeah, let's do that. Let's get back to that.
Share what we've learned with Bridget.
Well, yeah, go for it, Tom. Kick us off.
So, in conclusion, Bridget, here are the Failing Writers podcast recommendations for the revitalisation of the subject of English. Number 1, we strongly suspect the previous government's heavy focus on STEM subjects has created a perception that art subjects might not be as worthy as sciences. A sense that seems to have filtered into schools and right down to the students themselves.
Especially in the current climate where university is overwhelmingly expensive and students understandably want their subject to lead to something more definite.
Yeah, it's a worrying idea, isn't it? It seems to suggest that the arts should be viewed as pleasant diversions at best, rather than genuinely useful degree options, which is also patently not true, especially because we're a nation with an incredible pedigree in the creative arts. If you think of all the industries that rely on future generations of enthusiastic English students, there's some of our biggest industries, the most highly esteemed exports: publishing, television, film and entertainment, computer games,
journalism, advertising, theatre.
Yeah, and it even comes across into like academia and law. Pretty much any industry that requires clearly communicating ideas, and double so with like creativity and what have you. The export market in publishing alone is worth over $4 billion a year. So we should probably start celebrating the arts again.
Yep. Number 2, I hate to say it, but we probably shouldn't keep ignoring the use of smartphones and screen time. And whilst we hate pointing at tech and blaming the ills of society on them, having spent time talking to teachers and parents and looking at the science, there is absolutely no question they are having a massively detrimental effect on young people's ability to focus, their productivity, their general mental health, and their appetite for reading and writing. Here's what my son said when I asked him about it.
If there's a common theme that all kids are like English is going downhill, I'd say it's because of TikTok and like attention spans are getting worse.
But do you think that's true of you as well?
Yeah, sort of.
You see, he gave that up so easily. I thought he might at least, try and defend himself there, but no. So here's what I'm thinking, Tom. We need to get smartphones out of schools. We also need to explain to young people how deliberately addictive the apps and games are, and the downsides of spending too much time on them. In fact, do you know what? Why not go full draconian and have an age limit for smartphones? Here's the thing. I reckon you wouldn't even have to enforce it. Just giving parents the excuse they've been looking for not to buy their kids a smartphone might just be enough.
Yeah.
What do you think of that idea, Tom?
No,
it's quite heavy-handed, that, isn't it?
It is
criminalising children.
It is, maybe, but, I'm not sure how popular that would be with the electorate of kind of.
I still think it should happen.
I did not say I was opposed to it. I did not say that, because it's that thing, though, isn't it? Even like when you're out and about, you get a bit sad if you sat in a restaurant or a pub or whatever having a meal, and mum and dad are on the phones, and the two kids are sat there on the phones as if it's
nobody's
just
saying a word. So quite often it's the baby's on the phone as well these days.
Oh, that is the most annoying. Sometimes, I tell you, that gets my goat so much that I will take a picture of it and WhatsApp it to my fellow diners. I'm joking aside. But you generally do see that often where it's like, oh, there's a baby. Right, give him an iPad. Right. Yeah. Oh, we can carry on with our life.
They're noisy, aren't they, babies?
Well, they are. That's true. Anyway, enough about that bit. Let's not put the last bit about pubs and stuff in the letter, because I think that's probably distracting.
Okay, probably not. Sorry, Bridget. Okay, yes. Carry on, Tom.
Number 3. Maybe we're too idealistic, but we don't think any English curriculum should prize learning outcomes and testing over enjoyment. English teachers from primary through to secondary need to be able to foster a sense of playfulness and exploration while teaching reading, writing and oracy. Let's give them more freedom to be able to inspire. Passionate teachers inspire passionate learners. That's a theme that came up again and again. If we make teaching less about ticking boxes and more about the love of learning, we give our kids a better chance of wanting to keep learning.
Yeah. And for the love of all that's holy, can we please put writing assessment back into the realm of coursework rather than exams? Like, how do you expect kids to learn to draft when all your written work is exam-based? That is actually just mental.
The worry with that bit for me is as well, though, John, is that with the dawn of AI and stuff...
I get that, yeah.
Education sees that as a way of easily getting rid of that by
but that's
putting them in a closed
just
situation,
preposterous, just using that as an excuse. I mean, it will happen, inevitably, but there are ways of checking that as well.
Coursework could be done in class as well, couldn't it? But it doesn't have to filter down to one 45-minute end of the year, do or die, boom or bust. Come on, kids, come up with an idea now, otherwise you will fail.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, a little bit of a side. It's back to the letter. Also, encouraging the reading and exploration of a range of rich texts, and most importantly, and here's the big thing, promoting writing that has a real purpose rather than just to fulfill some learning criteria.
Yeah.
When young people have something to say, you know, a story in their head, an issue to get across, someone interesting to write to, burgeoning feelings, bubbling emotions underneath that they want to get out, they are so much more driven to write.
A little anecdote for you, Bridget. My son, that same lad you just heard, he started out loving writing stories in primary school. In year 4, a story he was really excited to show his teacher was marked according entirely to its spag and not remotely according to its ideas or content. And there was a lot of red pen. But since then, I've never managed to really dissuade him that he's just not into English. And
because he thinks it's genetic and he's got it off you. Is that why? He sees what you're doing and thinks, I've just got no chance.
Yeah, if your dad's a failing writer, I mean, what chance do you have? But I just think it might be counterproductive to treat English literature as a sort of dry list of rules that has to be learned as quickly as possible. You know, I might as well be a punishment that has to be endured.
So Bridget, we're aware you're currently conducting a curriculum review and are very excited that this might help readdress the balance between technical accuracy and creativity.
Yeah. You know what would be great? Bringing back the joy of the English language into the classroom and trying to avoid sucking the living, breathing life out of it, wouldn't it? That would be good.
It's difficult not to agree with that, John. That does sound better. That does sound better.
And we know you'll already be familiar with a lot of these arguments, but it probably doesn't hurt to re-emphasize the point. Oh, and can I please recommend you reach out to the very inspiring Bob Cox, creator of Opening Doors, and Leah Crawford, details in the show notes, about ways in which these ideas could be woven into the curriculum nationally. I think these guys would make excellent government consultants on English provision, even though they're very busy and will probably kill me for saying that.
Probably will. Oh, more work. Brilliant. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
And you also need to speak to Dr. Rebecca Fisher, CEO of the English Association. Those folk have some excellent ideas about how to turn the ship around, or at very least, prevent it from sinking quite so quickly, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
Which would be nice. Okay, well, thank you very much, Bridget, for listening. Let's just pretend she's listening.
Definitely.
And good luck with everything.
Yeah.
You got yourself quite a task there. But, you know, I reckon it's all doable. So.
Oh, what a lovely sentiment, John. I'm sure that's really helped Bridget's confidence.
Saying it's all doable?
Yeah. Because she's probably, now she's heard that, she'll be like, oh, I was thinking this is quite an insurmountable mountain now. But now John said that, I think I'm calmer about the whole thing.
I have that effect on people, Tom.
Yeah.
So we're going to sign off.
Suppose we should. Let's sign off.
Yours sincerely, John Rand, ex-teacher, parent of teenagers who I've struggled to get to read books despite years of trying, and co-host of the podcast, The Failing Writers.
And Tom Turner, English language graduate, proud parent of kids who do actually read, and the other co-host of the Failing Writers podcast.
Bye!
That wasn't very professional, was it? You don't sign off letters with a bye, do you? That's not how you...
I was just being friendly. Right. I was just sort of finishing off the podcast. What you think? Do you think she might not take us seriously?
No, I don't think there's any risk of that. I suspect she won't ever listen to this anyway, but even if she does, I'm pretty sure she wasn't taking us seriously from the very beginning.
Yeah, that's probably true. So I can just say bye then, because it doesn't really matter.
Good point. Bye! Bye! Draw now! Bye!
Hey, Tom.
What?
We got a reply.
Shut up. What? From Bridget?
Actually got a reply. We got a reply
Did
from
we?
Bridget.
Seriously?
Seriously. Well, sort of.
Well, what do you mean sort of? She either replied or...
It wasn't really from Bridget. It was from some poor civil servant tasked with replying to some random podcast who thinks they're being useful but are probably just slowing down the ponderous wheels of government even more by writing letters that need responding to.
All right. Okay. But what does it say?
Well, it kind of addresses the points we've made and also in quite a lot of detail.
Well, that's brilliant then. Anyway, we've done it. I was sceptical. At the start of the episode, John, I'll be honest with you, I was sceptical. I thought we're not going to make any difference, honestly. Well, but we did it. We've done it. We're the hero of the children. Oh, my God, we're going to get like statues outside school. These are the guys that be like, these are the guys. Do you remember back in 2024? These are the guys that say... Tom. Is that John and Tom? Yes, the English guy.
I don't think we have. I think it's fair to say that a lot of the reply is, like bureaucratic fluff.
Lots of words that maybe aren't completely functioning as words per se, and more as a barrier to the other words that aren't behind them.
Yeah, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being unfair. Like we said at the start, it is a complex issue, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It was unlikely to ever be like hey, Bridget here. Thanks for your letter, guys. You're completely right. I'll crack on with those changes. Should have it all sorted by a week on Friday.
Yeah, but maybe, just maybe, we did make a little bit of a difference. Maybe, raised an issue that they'd missed, or reminded them of the passion that exists about writing, or that it can be so easily extinguished without the right fuel. Do you know what I mean? From the teachers in our kids. And it's the next generation, isn't it? It's the future, our future, all our futures.
Exactly that, Tom.
It matters. It matters.
It does.
So I guess to sum that up then, from the letter, we're kind of unofficially the saviours. So there might not be statues and stuff, but we've kind of put the foundational work in.
Yeah, we're still saviours. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I mean, you know what we actually should do, don't you?
What? What's that?
What we actually should do, get the red pen out and mark their letter of response for spag and whether they've used enough fronted adverbials and send it back to them. Yeah.
Have you used alliteration there? No.
Yes, no, you should.
You could have popped a metaphor in there, used the rule of three. That's a brilliant idea, Tom. Let's do that. Fight fire with fire. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, actually, speaking of marking stuff, when we knew we were going to do this episode about kids writing and stuff and had all the bits and bobs to put in of kids doing their poems and things, we did put a little call out on the socials, didn't we?
Oh, we did. Yeah, asking if anyone's kids wanted to send something in for us to read. Yeah.
And we've picked our favourite one of what was sent in to read out to the class. And you really connected with this one, didn't you, John? You really liked it.
I did. I like this one. It's a poem called Time by Emery. Do you want to read it, Tom?
Yeah. 10 hours fly by. 9 moments remembered. 18 minutes are gone. 7 years it felt like. 6 clocks around the world. 5 car rides already over. 4 days off coming soon. 3 centuries have passed. 2 kids left for college. 1 baby grows up too fast.
That's nice, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
The little countdown. It's. I think that, like, the fact that was from a kid of 10 years old, and having a sense of the ephemeral nature of life and time passing. I think that's astonishing.
Yeah, and do you know what I like about it as well? It's not instantly understandable, is it? Like you have to spend some time with it, like a proper good poem. It's not some 2-dimensional thing that a kid's churned out.
It's not a straightforward story, is it?
It's got some real depth, or like kind of needs decoding and stuff, and there's a real meaning behind it. So that's lovely, isn't it? See, that's creativity. That's what we're talking about, isn't it? Those ideas bubbling under the surface. We just need to try and create a schooling system that can both measure skills and competency in an academic sense without squashing the life out of the stuff that really drives writing forward.
That and turn the internet off.
Probably that would also help. Yeah, that as well.
But hey, at least we don't need to worry about the rest of it anymore now that you and me have sorted it all out, Tom.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Very true, my fellow saviour of creative literacy.
Yes.
Hey.
Okay.
High five.
Right.
Yeah.
So now that's done. Until next time.
Yeah, what we can do next episode, solve world hunger, or, I mean, where are we going to go from here? We don't know.
Let's not overstretch ourselves,
Yeah,
Tom.
we'll see. But yes, thank you for listening, everyone. And hey, keep writing, even if your spag isn't tip-top. Keep writing.
Hello?
Where's everybody gone?